Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating political paradox brought up in a recent breakdown by Sky News Australia. Think about this for a second. Could harsh, relentless criticism from the mainstream media actually be the ultimate political fuel for the exact populist movements it's trying to defeat? It sounds counterintuitive, right? Well, let's dive into the data and analyze how this dynamic actually works. Section 1. The Unexpected Election Surge. Breaking down the victory in Farah. To really wrap our heads around this dynamic, the Sky News analysis points straight to One Nation's recent electoral win in Farah. Now, according to the commentary, this win was significantly larger than the initial polls had projected. But, and here's the key, it was actually entirely unsurprising to anyone who was paying close attention to the electorate. What the source highlights as truly wild, however, is the aftermath. The analysis characterizes the mainstream reaction to this victory as, frankly, hysterical. The commentator even playfully coins a brand new term for this media overdrive, the Pauline syndrome, comparing the establishment's total meltdown to other highly polarized political fallouts we've seen. Securing that single crucial first lower house seat was a massive milestone. But how did it actually happen? Well, the Sky News piece notes a very specific strategic move. Angus Taylor made a deliberate decision to preference One Nation over an independent candidate. The commentary highlights that this preferencing decision was absolutely vital. It's the factor that helped get them across the line to secure that pivotal lower house seat, which immediately kickstarts the formal process of political legitimization. Moving right along to Section 2, Media Reaction and Backfire, the Unintended Consequences of Outrage. Now, the crucial point here is how this milestone was actually received by the broader media, specifically the ABC. As Sky News contributor James Bolters puts it, "If I am One Nation, I am delivering a big bouquet of flowers to the ABC." It's such a striking image, right? The core irony the commentator is pointing out is that the ABC's coverage, which was highly critical, was essentially an accidental gift. Instead of damaging the party, the relentless media focus basically handed them unparalleled free visibility. Let's break down the cause and effect here. The ABC's intent, according to the source, was to frame this win as a big and dangerous mistake. They were attempting to firmly delegitimize the party in the eyes of the public, arguing that even with a lower house seat, the party remained totally illegitimate. But the actual result? The Sky News analysis argues this exact framing spectacularly backfired. By constantly attacking them and slapping that illegitimate label on them, the media inadvertently provided One Nation with, quote, the best promotional material for the rest of the year. It is literally the ultimate unintended consequence. This brings us to Section 3, Ignoring the Voters' Concerns, the gap between elites and the public. So you might be wondering, why did this media framing fail to resonate with the voters in Farah? The Sky News piece argues it all comes down to a profound disconnect. The analysis claims that a quote-unquote political elite is actively ignoring vast swaths of the Australian population regarding three specific issues. First up, immigration, which is framed as being just too uncomfortable to think about. Second, social cohesion, deemed way too difficult to tackle. And third, the cost of living crisis, which the commentary claims is simply too boring for the political class to discuss. The analysis states that One Nation's rise is directly tied to the fact that they are consistently loud on these exact three issues, acting as a massive magnet for people who desperately want these topics discussed. This disconnect absolutely reflects the reality on the ground in places like Farah. We're talking about an electorate full of people who felt they were completely on the outside of the political debate. Remember, this was historically a really safe Liberal seat, so the fact that it flipped or heavily shifted is presented as undeniable proof that the electorate just felt taken for granted. And honestly, when voters feel abandoned by the mainstream on those critical everyday issues, they naturally flock to the alternatives who are willing to speak up. Let's explore the mechanics of this a bit further in Section 4, the power of the outsider, why rejection is a political asset. To really grasp what the Sky News analysis is saying, we need to clearly define outsider status. It's a political position where being actively rejected by the mainstream system or the political elites actually serves as a powerful magnet for disillusioned voters. These are folks who specifically want an outsider to come in and shake things up in Canberra. The commentary argues that the single best thing One Nation can do is continue to paint themselves in exactly this light. Being painted as fringe isn't a weakness here at all. It's the core engine of their political strength. And this creates what we can call the populist feedback loop. It's a genuinely fascinating cycle based on the source material. Here's how it works. In step 1, as a populist party succeeds, their poll numbers rise. Now, this actually risks giving them a mainstream appearance, making them look like part of the very system they criticize. But then, right on cue in step 2, the mainstream media attacks the party as fringe and illegitimate. And the result in step 3? That very media attack actively saves the party. It completely restores and strengthens their outsider status. The elite's rejection totally validates the party in the eyes of their base. It's just a perfect, self-sustaining loop. Which leads us into our final section, a new political reality, reassessing the political landscape. It's really important to note the perspective of the source itself here. The Sky News commentator is very upfront about their own reservations. They explicitly state, "I'm not One Nation's biggest fan, but anyone can see that they are a force to be reckoned with." The commentator fully notes that the party has problems that need addressing. However, they are taking a step back to look at the objective data. Basically, regardless of personal political preference, the source argues that the momentum of this movement is now just an undeniable reality of the Australian political landscape. And what's the most striking piece of evidence provided in the commentary? Well, consistent polling over several months claims that right now, One Nation is not just legitimate, they are actually polling higher and are larger than the coalition. Let that sink in. The source uses this specific data point to send a really stark warning. It is well past time for the political class to wake up. Because, as the commentator notes, the longer it takes for the establishment to realize this, the better it is for the populist outsider. So we arrive at the end of this explainer with a critical question to leave you with. Does media outrage ultimately strengthen the very movements it aims to defeat? Based on the Sky News analysis we've just walked through together, the attempt to delegitimize outsider parties might just be the exact mechanism that guarantees their survival and their growth. It's a complex dynamic that really forces us to rethink how political discourse actually operates today. Thanks so much for joining me to break this down, and I highly encourage you to keep questioning the narratives and looking closely at the data. See you next time.